My guests today have been fighting for close to a decade to get rid of Jacksonville's monuments to the Confederacy. Last week, they celebrated a seismic victory in Springfield Park when the largest of the remaining statues was dismantled and removed. Joining me today, Todd, member of TakeEmDownJax. Welcome.
Thank you, Ann. Thanks for having us.
And Bobbie O'Conner, longtime community activist on issues of racial justice and also a TakeEmDownJax member. Welcome, Bobbie.
Thanks, Ann.
To our listeners, what are your thoughts about the recent removal of the Confederate statue in Springfield Park? Are you celebrating its removal, or are you concerned about the process used to take it down? Give us a call at 549-2937 or send an email to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also message us on Facebook and Instagram, or you can tag us on X at FCC On Air. Todd, as long as you've been working on this issue, how did this moment feel to you?
Well, I'd first like to say it was a healing moment for Jacksonville. The stories that people told who came out to see the removal of these statues ranged from telling about lynchings that occurred, the history that their grandparents told them about segregation here in Jacksonville, and the humiliation that African Americans went through during that period. So it was a very healing moment for Jacksonville, and it's what we need more of here.
There was a lot of jubilation there. I went down with my producer to watch the removal, and a lot of emotion, mostly positive emotion. But it's worth remembering that it was a very, very difficult battle to get to that point.
Yes,
Talk
it
a little
was.
bit about what it is that you've been involved in on a daily or even weekly basis.
Well, over the past 8 years, in the struggle to remove this statue that really shouldn't have went up in the first place, it went up decades after the Civil War, and it went up to reinforce segregation in Jacksonville, and it was put up to send a message to the African American community that white rule was still in place and would be in place for some time. I think that the struggle just kind of reflects for us the depth of racism in Jacksonville, because I believe those statues should have never been up, but they should have been down once we requested their removal. But it's been 8 years, and we went through a lot of different events to bring to the attention to the Jacksonville public about why these statues needed to be removed. Education is key for people to understand why these statues should come down.
Bobbie O'Conner, you've worked on a lot of issues of racial justice dating back decades in Jacksonville. How does this issue stand out for you?
A moment for deep celebration, because it was, as Wells said, long overdue. Never should have been put up, but long overdue to come down. And along with the healing that Wells mentioned, we were taking sips of champagne and toasting, and we were singing goodbye to her because she needed to be said goodbye to. So it's been a wonderful journey to do this. It's been hard work, calls to city council, meetings with city council members, trying to get votes, meeting with the mayor, just meeting after meeting, and like Wells said, educating the people. We had education series. We educated people about what the monuments meant and also about how racism shows up in our city.
So the removal happened in the early morning hours of December 27th. Some have referred to it as the dark of night. I think it's fair to say that the workers arrived in the dark, and then the statue was removed in the early morning. But there were people there with champagne. How did you learn that this was happening?
Well, we Take Them Down learned because Wells got a call from media saying, do you know about the equipment that's in the park, and do you know if the statues are coming down? And, of course, we went directly to the park and saw the cherry pickers and saw the huge lights. And Wells and I had this banter going back and forth because Wells was like, I can't believe it's happening. And I said, Wells, it's happening. And then later, after the first, we got there at 2 a.m, because that's when we heard that it was happening. And at 3 o'clock, security showed up. And they didn't know why they were there. They were just told to show up. And I would look at was and say, well, do you think it's happening? And then at 4 o'clock, men in hard hats showed up, and we knew, and then a flatbed truck showed up. So they started work. It took a lot of prep. They had to literally cut the fence because the gate wasn't big enough for the vehicles to get through. So a lot of prep, but both statues came down in the light of day.
We've got a call, Kate from the Rail Yard District. Kate, good morning. Welcome to First Coast Connect.
Oh, good morning. I just wanted to say thank you to Wells Todd and his wife, Etta Edlinger, and Bobbie O'Conner, and all the rest of the people who founded TakeEmDownJax. This never would have happened without these people. And to me, it boils down to empathy and compassion. No black person should ever have been forced to walk past them or buildings named after traitorous and seditious Confederate monsters. They murdered, raped, and beat and lynched their ancestors because they were only put up in an attempt to scare and intimidate them after the Civil War. It's also so very sad that these racist white supremacists still come to city council claiming that this is their heritage when they are really just ignorant and uneducated. I also want to really thank Donna Deegan for doing what she did when the city council would not do the right thing. I will still never understand why they were all never required to go on record and articulate why they wanted to keep up these statues. But for years, they did not do the right thing, even after Charlottesville, even after the Pentagon changed the names of the military bases, and Richmond, which was the capital of the Confederacy, took every single one of theirs down. So bravo to everyone involved. Absolutely a phenomenal, well done job. Thank you.
Kate, thank you so much. We've also got a call, Stanley on the north side. Good morning, Stanley. Welcome to First Coast Connect.
Todd, my hero, Ben Frazier. Yes, he's still alive in my spirit. I am happy. Now, I did not campaign to remove the monument, but I am elated that they came down because it's a dark spot in the African-American community. It's a dark spot for the city. And the mayor, happy, and at the right time. Thank you.
Thank you, Stanley. I appreciate the call. So this issue has been celebrated. It also has sparked some controversy. Earlier this week, on Monday, there was a city council meeting that was pretty contentious. A lot of city council members putting the general counsel on the hot seat, asking him about the decision-making process, how this happened. President Ron Salem was particularly heated. He was the one who wanted to address this at this Rules Committee meeting. So let's hear a little bit about what he had to say.
From what I have, and I've had many phone calls, Mr. Fackler. I've had calls from the Austin administration people, Delaney, Payton, and Curry administration, and I haven't had a single person that wasn't, and I'll use the word appalled by this decision by your office. And are there any restrictions by the ordinance code, charter, et cetera, for the mayor to take an executive action where she could potentially raise money to remove the Charlie Bennett statue, which is in a park, remove the Andrew Jackson statue if she chose, or any other mayor for that matter, to use private funds to remove a statue without consent of the city council?
Well, Todd, I want to ask you about that. Now, Ron Salem has gone on to introduce some legislation that would prevent this kind of use of public or private dollars to remove a public monument. And he specifically mentioned Andrew Jackson's statue, which I should say is a statue that TakeEmDownJax has advocated to remove. What are your thoughts about that being a specific concern of the council as something that could be removed?
Well, first I would like to say there was a lot of posturing at that meeting. I think that the real issue here is the fact that these were statues to honor traitors, to honor people who committed crimes against humanity, and they should have never went up, like I said earlier, but they need to come down across the country. I think that for a long time, and I think throughout our history, we have been honoring people who have committed heinous acts, acts against the native nations that were here when Europeans came over here and decimated the indigenous nations. and we honor those people who carried out those crimes. And I think it's time that we start paying our respects and honoring the people who fell victim to the invasion, actually, of North America. And I also think that what the discussion should be based around is not that the mayor took the statue down. She had the right to take it down. In the charter, they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with the charter, because the charter gave her permission to take it down. The real question here, the real debate that I think needs to be done and had here is the nature of these Confederate statues that went up during the period of segregation, that period where lynchings occurred, the period where millions of African Americans had to leave the South and migrate to the North to escape the horrendous conditions in the South. And I think that's the discussion that needs to be had. And I'll say this, Dean Black, representative who's putting forward a bill to keep Confederate statues up, and Governor DeSantis, who is backing him, we have asked DeSantis to come to town to actually sit down and speak with us. We have never gotten an answer back from him, but we want to ask both Dean Black and DeSantis to come to town to sit down and have a discussion, because we need a period in this country of truth and reconciliation, like they did in South Africa after the overthrow of apartheid.
It's worth noting, Dean Black is from Jacksonville, a Republican. His bill, Bobbie, would actually be retroactive to 2017. Not only would it require that monuments be put back if they were removed, but going forward, if a mayor or local official had one removed, they could be removed from office themselves by the governor. So what are your thoughts about whether we could actually be rolling back some of the progress that you guys have advocated?
Well, certainly my hope is that they don't, that the bill will be ruled unconstitutional, because I think that's what it's not constitutional what he's proposing we do. I think there is a lot of posturing going on, and that was happening in the meeting on Tuesday, the City Council Rules Committee. It was like one of the council members said, "What's the rush?" The rush is we've been working 8 years to make this happen, and you all have been sitting on your hands. And last year we made over 100 phone calls to city council members asking them to meet with us, and only 8 even responded. Some of them never responded. Call after call, going up and sitting in the lobby, never responded. One gentleman even said, "Oh, I have enough information. I don't need to meet with you all." So it's like, I think it's posturing. And I hope that, you don't know what the Republican legislature is going to do, because they could pass the bill even though it's unconstitutional. Sure. And then there'll be legal battles, I'm sure.
We got a couple of calls coming in. I want to get to Terry from the South Side. Good morning. Welcome to First Coast Connect.
Good morning. We need to realize that monuments not only honor people and events, but they enshrine ideologies. And it was time for us to have an honest conversation about what ideologies these Confederate monuments enshrined. And it's clear they enshrine the false notion of superiority, namely white supremacy, that has fostered so much injustice toward Black Americans for too long. And we have this terrible history of racial violence right here in Jacksonville. I remember the story my grandmother shared of almost being kidnapped on her way to work one morning by white men wielding clubs trying to snatch her off the street to lynch her. I was a child of the 1970s school desegregation, and we went through terror, both Black children and Black educators. And my own sister lost her life, my oldest sister, when she was called the N-word by a white man driving a truck, and he ran her over on Heckscher Drive. So this has gone on for too long. And then we add the massacre at Dollar General in the neighborhood where I grew up. So it's long past time for these monuments to come down, because it's the same ideology that has caused so much death and terror towards Black Americans. So many thanks to my friends at TakeEmDownJax for their leadership. Many thanks to Mayor Deegan for her leadership in finally moving this forward. And know this, as long as the moral arc of the universe continues to bend towards justice, the lost cause will continue to lose. Thank you.
Terry, thanks so much for sharing your story. I mean, it's a powerful reminder of just how awful the history of segregation and racial discrimination and racism has been in Jacksonville. Bobbie, yes.
One of the things that I think it's important for us to remember when we were working with the Aspen Institute and the Human Rights Commission and the Community Foundation on Project Breakthrough, changing the story of race in Jacksonville, Charlene Taylor Hill and I went back and looked at all the studies. There was a study in 1946 called Jacksonville Looks at Its Negro Community. And we had those studies, we looked at all the studies. There were so many of the studies in 1980 that had the same recommendations that had never been met. So we've been working on this far longer than 8 years.
We've got a call, Chris from Arlington. Good morning. Welcome to First Coast Connect.
Good morning. I just really wanted to commend the people at TakeEmDownJax for the 8-year fight to get these monuments down. I know myself and many other people in the community have worked really hard to create the conversation. And Todd is right. We have never had the conversation between our city officials and the community and actually got to the raw details of what the problem truly is. Symbols hold power. We've seen that over and over and over again. And like I say, and I'll say till I'm probably dead, if we didn't need symbols, then churches would not have crosses. We would not have stop signs. We would not have hospital signs. Symbols do hold power, and this is true over and over again. But I do want to get down to the meeting that I witnessed with City Council. We have a City Council president that loves to overreach when he feels passionate about it. But when other people do things that are in the favor of the community, they have a problem with it. We have to remember that Ron Salem sat up at the end of this meeting and said that he is worried about his power being taken away. We need to pay attention to those words. The words power should not be involved when it comes down to being a city council member and being the city council president who is supposed to be advocating for us.
Chris, thank you so much for your call. I appreciate it. I want to take a call now. Bubba from Jacksonville, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. This is John Hancock. I want to say thank you very much to Dr. Wells Ford and Drs. Bobbie O'Conner. Thank you for everything. This administration has made a difficult decision. It isn't new. When we walked out of the human rights change, the update 10 years ago, we pointed to the statue and said, okay, that's next, and it's been down. And now this is another one. The only thing that needs to be slow is to be careful taking them down. Don't get hurt. But this is the right step. And sir and ma'am, I beg you to get one Jax to contact Con and have a huge meeting. Have 10,000, and we sit all day and talk about race in Jacksonville. Take care of yourselves. We can be a model to the Middle East of how diplomacy can work. Mr. Todd, can you hear me?
Yeah, we'll have him answer to that. Thanks so much for your call. Wells Todd.
Well, thanks for all of the support that we're getting here. I want to say that this was a community effort. This was a grassroots movement that actually brought this statue down. And I do want to thank Mayor Deegan for upholding her promise to do that. I think some of the history of these statues, once again, has not been shared in our schools. We need to talk about the fact that these statues went up after the overthrow of Reconstruction. I don't think many people even understand Reconstruction of the South. I don't think that people know that there were over 1,000 elected black officials throughout that 10-year period. And all throughout that period, black people were terrorized by the Klan, which, by the way, was organized and controlled by the wealthy landed aristocracy here in the South. And it was a bloody overthrow. People died, white and black people. And I want to say that the healing process in this town, in this city, is for everyone. There were white people out there when this statue came down, right alongside the African American community. And I think that that's a major step forward. We have politicians who want to keep this divide going because we know it benefits a handful of people. But as we educate the community, we see the community starting to come together.
I want to ask you, Bobbie, because the issue before City Council, you briefly alluded to the inaction of council because they have had money and they have had many, many meetings hearing about this issue and didn't act. But the concern about the way that the statue was removed without notification or permission of council in the dark of night, it was not an issue that emerged when Mayor Lenny Curry had the statue of the Confederate soldier removed in the dark of night. And I've heard that concern, or at least that contradiction, something that people have expressed concern about.
I've heard that also. In fact, I for some newspaper, I can't remember which one, said that Ron Salem said that he was concerned about it when Lenny Curry did that, but he wasn't council president. And I thought to myself, well, what does that have to do with anything? You still could have expressed your concern. But I think Mayor Deegan got legal counsel, which was a smart thing to do, and she followed her legal counsel's advice. And none of those people who spoke against our general counsel at that meeting, I don't think any of them have law degrees. So what do they know? And if he had given an opinion that they liked, they wouldn't have raked him over the coals. They spoke in self-righteous, condescending ways to that good man. I actually felt badly for him. And I thought you were upholding your opinion and doing the right thing by standing there and taking all this from them.
I think we should note that the council has said that it is a process question, that they're not trying to put the statue back, that they believe that council controls the purse strings of the city and that they should have been at least notified before this happened, that they were blindsided.
I think it's interesting because this request or demand for the removal of these statues came up 3 times before the city council over the years. And each time it was either tabled or there was no discussion. And so the question I have for the city council is, why would you support keeping Confederate statues up no matter which way they were removed?
Wells, Todd, Bobbie O'Conner, thank you so much for being here today to discuss this issue. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you for having us.